Hey Haley, so I'm gonna run through each. Hey Haley, so I'm gonna run through each section of the chapter and kind of give you a run through. This isn't me explaining it all the way. It's me sending you the most important reminders. So for 3.1, we graphed it in what's called vertex form, which looks like this, where you have x inside of parentheses with a squared on the outside. The number in front of the parentheses is a vertical stretch. What you're going to do is multiply the ups by a. The original pattern is over 1, up 1, and over 2, up 4. This is easy to remember because 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. So let's say this number was a 2. I would multiply just this part by 2. So it would go over 1 up 2, and over 2 up 8, because these two get doubled. The number inside of the parentheses moves the vertex left if it's a plus, right if it's a minus. This part's a little tricky because our minds want to think left is the minus, but it's not. Left is if it's a plus. The number at the end moves it up and down. Up if it's a plus, down if it's a minus. And these two numbers on the ends, inside the parentheses and at the very end, those just move the vertex. That's it. So what you do is you move the vertex. It normally starts at 0, 0. So you move it left or right, up or down, and then from that point, the vertex, you follow this pattern. You keep this pattern the same if there's not a number outside, and if there is a number outside, you multiply just these parts by it. Okay? 3.2 is standard form, which does not have the parentheses like this. It could be y equals, or it could equal 0 like this. Both of those are possibilities. The vertex can't be found by doing the left and right, up and down thing, because there's no parentheses. So instead we use this formula, negative b divided by 2a. B is always the number in the middle, a is always the number out front. So you're going to do negative whatever's in the middle divided by 2 times whatever's out front. And then you need a y value also, so you're going to plug that value into the equation to find y and write it as a point, x comma y. And that point will go on your graph. Then you need to find the y-intercept. That's where you plug in 0 for x. But if you plug in 0 for x, this becomes 0, this becomes 0, and all you have left is c. So the y-intercept is always going to end up being c, or the last number that doesn't have an x with it, because everything that does have an x with it became 0. So it's the only thing left standing, kind of. 3.3 asks you to factor. I'm going to use 3 slides to go over this one. The first type of factoring is if you don't have a number in front of x squared, like this. And on this one, you want 2 numbers that multiply to the last number and add to the middle number. My 2 numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to 5 are 7 and negative 2. And these are my factors right here. Okay? And I'm going to skip over the next part because I did this with everybody the day of the test and I kind of combined a couple of things. Don't worry about this next piece. The second type of factoring is if there is a number in front of x squared like this. And on this one, you have to multiply the first times the last. So in this case, 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So I'm multiplying these two, and I get negative 12. And then I need 2 things that multiply to negative 12 and add to 1. In this case, that's going to end up being 4 minus 3, or 4 and negative 3. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and 4 minus 3 is 1. And what you do with those two numbers is you split this one up here in the middle. You do not go straight to parentheses. You can only go straight to the parentheses if there's not a number right here. Then you're going to group together these two and these two and take out their greatest common factors. So you can divide both of these by 2x. So you're going to put a 2x on the outside. 2 divided by 2 is 1x. X squared divided by x is x, by the way, because this has two x's and you're taking one of them out here. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and x divided by x means that there's no x's left with that 2. Over here, I can take out -3 and divide both of them by -3. -3x divided by -3 is just 1x. -6 divided by -3 is +2. Now what you will notice is they both have the same thing left in parentheses. So that's going to go out front like this, and then what's left in the other parentheses comes from whatever was on the outside. Here and here. That's what makes up the second parentheses. And that's the factored form. Again, ignore this next piece. We'll move on to the next type of factoring. The third type is binomials. That's where you only have two terms, so there's no middle piece. What you're going to do in this case is do the square root of 64, x squared, and the square root of 49. Anytime you have two terms, they're going to have perfect squares and be subtracted. And the square root of this one is 8x, the square root of this one is 7. And all you do is put that in both parentheses. One of them gets a plus and one of them gets a minus. The fact that they're the same thing but one has a plus, one has a minus is why there's nothing left in the middle right here. And that's it. That's factored. Okay? And then the fourth section asks you to find the zeros by graphing. All you have to do is graph the equation and look for the x-intercepts. That's it. So it's the same thing as 3.1, but then afterwards you look on the x-axis and you say, these are my numbers where it crosses. Then it asks you to do it by square rooting. Here's an example. What you want to do is get this all by itself first. So I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides. And then I'm going to take the square root. Okay, so square root. And whenever you square root both sides of an equation, you get two answers. The square root of 4 is going to be 2 and -2. Because 2 squared would have been 4, and -2 squared would have been 4. Then I need to add 5 to both sides. 2 plus 5 is 7. Ooh, hang on, let me go back. I think I forgot to type the answer on this one. And -2 plus 5 is 3. So your two answers would be 7 and 3. Those would be your zeros. Okay? And the very last piece is finding the zeros by factoring. And to find the zeros by factoring, you just factor, like I just explained in 3.3, and then set each factor equal to 0. I'm going to start off with the factored form, because if you're having trouble factoring, go back to the 3.3 parts. Once you have it factored like this, you pretty much want to say, okay, 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. And then you want to solve those equations. So like on this one, I would subtract the 3 to the other side. 0 minus 3 is -3. And then I would divide by the 2. So I would end up with negative 3 halves. And down here, I would just simply add 4 to both sides. And 0 plus 4 is 4. Negative 3 halves and 4.